Hey guys, it's Sunny with Parents on Demand, and today we're talking about creating a script for your podcast. Don't freak out. I know some of you, when I say the word script, you're like, no, I don't have a scripted show. Well, guess what? You really should have at least part of your show scripted. Perhaps part of it is an outline, but scripts are so helpful for making sure you are staying on track. So they're helpful for you, they're helpful for your guests. So your guests kind of have an outline or an understanding of how the episode is going to go. It's helpful for your editor. So your editor understands, okay, this is kind of the whole format of the show, and I edit this and then I edit that. Trust me, creating some sort of script or outline is essential for most, if not all, podcasts out there. Very few of us can get away with ad-libbing something and making sure it's coming off without a hitch. We can still have scripts. We can still make things sound very natural and conversational. And that's part of what I'm going to show you guys today. Okay. So that's the first thing to understand is when I say a script, I'm really talking about maybe a combination of a script or an outline, but something that's going to keep you on track so that your podcast turns out the way you intended it and not just some jumbled mess. Okay. The other thing I want to let you know is really when you're recording a great script, the way you do it, it's broken down into a couple different parts. 50% of recording a great script is the script writing. The other 50% is the delivery. So we're going to break this video down into two sections today. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about script writing and some really basic things that you can kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're writing your scripts. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you an example of a script. I highly suggest you take this script. This is actually a script from one of my old podcasts. I highly suggest you take it, you make a copy of it on Google Docs, you save it to your own library, and you format it the way that it makes sense for your show. But use this as an example. Let's quickly go through so you can see what I'm talking about when I'm suggesting that you create a script/outline for your show. So let's take a look at this script here so you can get an idea of how you could break down your script. What I used to do is I used to have the recording date at the top, the times, both Eastern and Pacific, because you know your guests could be coming from wherever, right? So just to be completely obvious about what time things start. Your virtual studio link, so this is for those of you that are meeting and perhaps using Zencaster or something like that where you need to send them a link in advance to meet you at. You have your number here for the number of episode it is. PP for me, this was for Preggy Pals, that was the show, and then the number afterwards. So perhaps it was episode 56, perhaps it was 156, but you would put that here. Whatever your episode title is, so if you want your editor or whoever's uploading your episode to title something very specifically, put it in there. Name of expert, their title if you want. Okay, so these are the different sections. I do suggest you think about your show in sections, and creating a script will definitely help you with that. So I would have a cold intro from the beginning. So this is one of the first things that people hear, and I would script it out. And this was basically a synopsis of what the episode was about. Perhaps you have the host read it. Perhaps you have your guest read it. Totally up to you. Then I would have my theme song play. And you can see that all this is very easily understood by laying this out in a script. Then we'd come out of that and we would do some announcements. You can see what I'm doing here with the times. I'm actually putting times in there because I know that this isn't 60 seconds long, right? I know that whatever I write in there isn't necessarily going to be what comes out of my mouth. But for me personally, it was more about letting the guest know kind of how the show was going to unfold. And I knew I was going to talk about some stuff. So maybe it makes more sense in here to put some bullet points and put up here how many seconds you think that things are going to last, just to give your guest and perhaps even your editor an idea of where you're going with this episode. Totally up to you, but I did it and it seemed to help. When you have commercial breaks, I've been talking to you guys a lot about commercial breaks and incorporating dynamic ads into your show. These are a great place to remind you, okay, I know after I do some announcements here, I'm going to go into a commercial break. So perhaps right here, I write something out that says, hey, thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be right back in just a second, or right back after this commercial break, however you want to say it. But you lead out with it. The editor knows if you're going to, put your own commercials in, to put a commercial in there, or perhaps you're doing dynamic, so you're just writing down the time code. Then I know I come out and I introduce the expert. And you can see here, so my interviews were divided up into 2 sections. I have the first part of the interview here and the second part of the interview here. I know we want our conversations to sound as natural as possible. Believe it or not, there is a way to do this with a partially scripted show. And what I would do is I would list my questions here, and I would think about, okay, I know I'm going to take a commercial break in the middle. So what are some good questions to put at the first half? And I would include them in the first half. What are some good questions to have in the second half? Okay, now I know what my second half is about. What's a good way to tease what's coming up? So if I go into a commercial break, it sounds natural, and hey, stick with us because after the break, we're going to talk about this. And so I would break those up into 2 points, wrap things up. I had a medical disclaimer at the end. And then I had some notes here. So this is great if you have someone that is, putting your content up on a website, or perhaps writing your descriptions for you. You can put whatever you want down here. Perhaps it's resources or links that you want to make sure go on your site, important keywords you want them to use in the title of your episode, things like that. Again, this is just one sample. This is something that I use that worked really well for me. I encourage you guys, download this, take it, modify it, use it. Make it work for you, change it up as much as you like, but moving forward, I'm going to challenge all of you to actually create some sort of script. Even if the words are there and you decide to say something completely different, that's okay too. But knowing you have something to fall back on if you need to, or if you feel more comfortable just reading it, as long as it sounds natural, that's the most important thing. Now let's talk about the actual words that you're writing, right? What are you actually writing that's part of your script? Many of you know that my background is in television news. So I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I started out working at radio and television stations. And we had this acronym. It's a little harsh, but it's still applicable here. And the acronym is KISS, and it stood for Keep It Simple, Stupid. I know it's a little harsh, but the idea is this. If someone's listening to your content, or in my case, they were watching the television or listening to a radio show, they didn't have the ability to go back and re-listen to what you said, right? If you didn't hear it right, you're like, what did they just say? But there was no way to rewind when you're watching live TV or a live radio program. So the idea is keep your copy, keep your words as simple as possible so people don't go, what did she just say? What was that word? Or she phrased that really weird, or her cadence was really weird when she said that. I don't really know what she was trying to say. She didn't stop at punctuation marks or things like that. So you would take a sentence and you would kind of dumb it down, to be honest. And really, it's more about presenting things in the way you would naturally talk to someone. So I know in podcasting, we do have the ability to stop an episode and rewind, but it is still a really good idea to keep your copy as simple as possible. Whatever words that you would typically use in just having a normal conversation with a friend, make sure that's how you're writing your script. And I know it's for those of us who went to college and we had to write a lot of term papers. And man, I remember writing these papers and throwing every word in the book there just to make it sound like I knew what I was talking about. This is the exact opposite of that. So you think what you did in college, forget all of that. Talk as simple and plain as possible. Consider the words you're using. I'm going to give you some examples here. Let's see if you fall into any of these traps. If you were going to say that somebody crossed the street, would you say, the pedestrian crossed the street? No, probably not, because that's not how we talk. We would say, oh, that guy crossed the street, or a person crossed the street. Let's think of something that's more related to parents. Okay, a lot of us talk about pregnancy. What about saying she had a cesarean section? Yeah, you could use that and probably sound okay. But most of the time when we're talking in everyday life, we call it a C-section. So yeah, she had a C-section. What about this? I'm going to purchase that baby stroller. Yeah, you could purchase a baby stroller, but more times than not, you're just going to go buy a baby stroller, right? Don't use purchase when you can use the word buy. Or here's one of my favorites. There were approximately 500 people that attended the baby shower. No, there were about 500 people that attended the baby shower. So consider your words, simplify everything as much as possible. Keep in mind my little acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, silly. Let's use the word silly instead, since stupid's kind of a mean way of saying it. The point is, keep it as simple as possible so your audience can understand what you're trying to say and they don't have to hit that rewind button. All right, so 50%, like I said, is your script writing. Keep it simple. Make sure you've got a script. Make sure you know what's coming up in your script. It will help you and your guests and your editor out immensely. The next thing I want to talk to you about is your delivery. Let me give you a few tips when it comes to delivery so you make your podcast the best it can possibly be. First of all, pretend that you're talking to one person. And you're in luck because when it comes to podcasting, most likely people are listening to your show independently of each other, right? They've got their earbuds in. So you really are kind of talking to one person. So make sure you sound like you're talking to just one person, preferably a friend or someone like that you feel really comfortable with. The next tip to have great delivery is to practice. Practice the words and don't just read it in your head, because believe it or not, when you say it out loud, you say things differently than you say them in your head. I cannot tell you how many times I have written a script, said it in my head, never verbalized it, and then when I went to actually read it, it sounded like a jumbled mess. It's crazy how it happens. So please take the time, read it out loud. You may look like a crazy person if you're reading your scripts or writing your scripts at Starbucks, but still, it's better that you do it in advance. Make the corrections on your script so you're ready to go when you actually are recording your show. Something else that really helps me is to get in the mood before I start recording. And I know our lives are crazy and sometimes, we're doing a bunch of things and we may not have time to do this, but if you can, try to take the 30 minutes before you do your show and just focus on your show. If you have a fun, uplifting show, perhaps listening to your favorite song, jamming out a little bit before you start recording. If you have more of a serious show, maybe you do a little bit more of a deep dive into the topic and really get into it and just reflect on what you're about to do with your show. And again, part of that is reading out loud and doing all that. But mentally, get in the right frame of mind. Turn off your cell phone. Tell the kids to watch Netflix, whatever you have to do to just be in it and properly prepare for your show. The next tip that I have is to have good body posture, because when we feel good, we usually portray that in how we act, right? So I have these little mic arms that allow me to kind of sit up a little bit better in my seat. As you can tell, I talk a lot with my hands. However, I would normally talk to somebody. That's what I'm going to do in my podcast. So it's crazy. Even if I didn't have this video going on right now and I was just recording audio, I would probably be looking at my microphone like this and I would be talking with my hands because I am a hand talker. And I highly suggest that you do that. The more natural you could be in whatever way you typically talk to people, do that when you're doing your podcast. So if you feel more comfortable in jammies, do it. If you have a big guest coming up and you know that your attitude is just going to be a little bit different, if you're wearing some nice slacks and a blouse or whatever the case may be, do that. Whatever is going to put you in the mood to achieve your goal of, producing this great episode, that's what you need to do. If script writing or writing an outline for your show is new to you, this is going to be awkward. There is no way around that. In the beginning, anything new you try is going to be awkward. But I promise, if you start today with the next show you record and you start writing some sort of script/outline to make everything flow better, you are really going to thank yourself. So how do you get better is the question. Yeah, we know in the beginning, we're going to be flailing around a little bit. How do we get better? First of all, you practice, right? What I said before, practice your lines, practice creating your scripts, create a natural workflow for you between you and your editor or your producer, whoever's part of your podcast team. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to feel with the whole process. The next thing I recommend when it comes to delivery of your script is to listen to yourself. It's really hard for us to listen to ourselves while we're recording. There's a million things that are going through our head. So my recommendation is get the raw audio file, and listen to the episode from start to finish. If you listen to yourself before your editor takes out your ums and ahs and all the stuff, all your mistakes, you are going to learn so much about yourself. And trust me, you're probably not going to make those same mistakes twice. You're going to take some notes. You're going to be like, well, I definitely don't want to do this again. Or I smack my lips before I start talking each time. Your editor will love you for this tip. So make sure you're checking in and you're listening. Don't just do it once, but perhaps once a month, once a quarter, something like that. And the last point is to ask for feedback on how you sound with your delivery. Does it sound natural? Ask your friends, your family, your mom, your dad, your kids, your spouse. I also recommend that you ask people that either produce podcasts or know a little bit about podcasting, because they may give you a totally different perspective than someone that may be looking at things with rose-colored glasses. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Don't be freaked out by the idea of writing scripts. Please take the time, download the template, make it your own. I promise you will not regret it. Your co-host, your guest, your editor will not regret it. And perhaps most importantly, your audience is going to love you for it because it's going to make for a better podcast. All right, good luck.